Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I have applied a couple of changes again, or did I say this already in the last video about this? I don't even remember. So if it's new to you, I'm glad that you're probably receiving a better sound quality. If it's not new to you, then it's good news that I'm maintaining it. Couple of responses to the previous Amateur Mind videos. Openings wise, many of you asked me if Queen's Gambit Declined is a-okay. Well, in my opinion, yes, it is. It is perfectly a-okay because once again it offers you a lot of different central structures and pawn structures depending on what white chooses to do. And as such, it is a very good opening. And even the Tarash, which is a bit of a sidekick of the Queen's Gambit Decline because it can be turned into it, is a reasonable choice. So those were forgotten, or rather not mentioned. Excuse me, in that video, and probably there were a few others, but I think I covered it reasonably well. So yeah, the discussion about those openings were quite fierce, and of course a lot of people came to me asking about the lemon openings like the London, and yeah, that it's a good way to learn chess because you learn a quick structure and then you are ready to go. No, it's not a good way to learn chess. It's a good way to learn an opening that is not going to give you anything at all, and more than likely is going to give you a very quick plateau from where you will struggle very quickly moving forward without actually swapping your opening repertoire into anything decent. Today I have chosen again at random a very interesting game that features a couple of typical mistakes that amateurs tend to make, and so I thought that I would address this by analyzing the game. It is a very fascinating one, so I'm really excited to go through this again. So it starts off as a Vienna, where white has got three very decent moves here: bishop c4, f4, and knight f3. The main concept of the Vienna would be the first two, bishop c4 or f4. Instead, queen f3 was played, which you might say that even on this level is a rather horrific move. And indeed it is. It violates every single rule of openings that we consider holy. But I need to tell you one thing that I think I read rather well the amateur's mind. The reason why the dude played this move was not because he was hoping for the scholar's mate, but because of he's one of those players who is obsessed with a certain concept in chess and wouldn't give up on it for the love of God, or rather, he wants to apply it in every single game he plays. And this is always a bad thing and happens a lot with a large variety of things in amateur games. This guy is obsessed with queenside castling. That's the only reason why he plays queen f3. Okay, and there are other dudes who are obsessed with developing both of their bishops fianchettoed. And again, if you have got only one thing that you like to do all the time in chess, that's always bad. Like, you're restricting yourself to such an extreme degree for no apparent reason that it's not even funny. It's like eating bread only for the rest of your life, when you actually do know that lots of other food exists out there, but nah, you just go with that because that's fun. Nah, well, not really. Actually, it's the exact opposite. You think you are having fun, but you are actually taking away lots of opportunities from yourself to have fun and try a lot of other things that would actually be way better in every single way for you. So here dude goes for queenside castles, and black goes like, nah, not now. Okay, so total fail. Black is already way ahead in the opening, and now there are two very good moves that I would go for do for black. One of them is d5, because you know that I'm a center maniac, and because of chess is meant to be played in the center. And the other one is bishop c5, which is a developing move as well as a center addicted move. Bishop b4, as per played in the game, is definitely not one of my favorites, because whilst it creates a pin, this pin is really unimportant for one, and second, when it gets contested, it's an awkward choice. Probably now logical would be to drop back, but black decided to go all the way back to e7. This is not to my liking because it's very passive. So rather drop back here, b4, drop back here, and then at least again we are on the correct diagonal, and these two moves are definitely weakening white's queenside, so that might amount to something later on too. Alright, so drop back, b4. Lost for words about this one. So this is an ultimate move where you just don't think about the value of it. You right away know that it's total rubbish because A, it's not developing, and B, it's not doing anything for the center. And why you would make such a move is really and truly beyond me. So if you ask me, this guy playing white has never ever had a chess coach of any value, and probably wouldn't have read too many semi-decent chess books either, because there is no way that this move should pop up on the horizon at all, especially not with a rating of 2100. So what this tells me is that the guy has got a very decent playing strength, and in fact we'll see that later on, but has no clue whatsoever about general principles. None whatsoever. Okay, and when I'm talking about playing strength, in this case it translates into reasonably good calculating ability. Okay, let's see how it progresses. b4, met by one of the worst, most horrendous amateur mistakes, h6. I always tell my students that if you have a chance between doing something very violent to your own hand, or make this move with that very hand, do something very violent to your hand, because it should not be doing this. It is disgraceful. Like, this move makes zero sense. White doesn't want to play bishop g5. Even if they did, it wouldn't do anything at all. So why stopping such a move is just a mystery. And again, d5 bites into the center beautifully. a5 bites into these two castles, continuous development. There's so many good moves available, and yes, black is doing okay, and even after h6 black is doing okay, but time is equally important to all these factors, and so this move loses a lot of time to allow white to catch up in development. That's why it is really poor. Bishop b2, continuing consistently this horrid plan. The bishop stands really badly on this diagonal. If anywhere, it should have come to e3, but more in e3. But more importantly, one should be concerned about developing this side of the board, because castling here now seems suicidal. Mind you, it's going to happen. So something like knight f3 followed by bishop e2 followed by castles here was absolutely vital. Vital it was. Okay, castles, I'm cool with that. Knight f3. He decided to take it. I'm not sure if d5 is playable here. Obviously, it's a pawn sec, but then after rook e8, I may be able to exploit the file. I don't know. It might be a little bit far-fetched, so takes is okay. And here comes again another typical mistake, that we're still obsessed with our plan of castling here and attacking on the king's side. So we take back with the pawn, which is an absolutely horrid decision, so that we can attack on the g file. Now, this is what Jonathan Rossin, or Lord knows how to pronounce his name, the very amazing chess book author from Scotland, a very decent grandmaster too, calls wishful thinking. And I think that this is classified in his 7 deadly chess scenes as egoism, when you are very busy with thinking about what you want to do, and you totally disregard A, what's in the position, and B, what your opponent wants to do. Like, first and foremost, attacking this king is 100% la land, never gonna happen unless black does something really poorly. Gonna happen in the game. And number two, if you just look at how the pieces are distributed, these two have got no chances whatsoever to contribute to this attack. Neither does this one really, because what will I do with it? So the only thing I have for this attack is the g file. The downside is a horrifically weakened pawn structure, a very weak f4 square, and even this diagonal can become quite nasty. Black correctly played d5, very good move, immediately contesting the center. Takes, and queen e2 once again, consistently following this really poor plan of castling here and then attacking here. Mind you, now he doesn't really have an option but to do that. Okay, now what does queen e2 not do? It doesn't actually attack the e5 pawn. And once again, this is a typical reaction from everybody of this rating level and even higher. Queen e2, oh my god, my pawn is hanging. There's no way that this pawn will be capturable, considering the fact that this king is stuck in the middle, and considering that I'm about to conquer the t file as black. So if I was black here, I would be thinking not about how to defend this, but how I'm going to win once they take. So I would like to make a useful move for the argument's sake, bishop f5, and I immediately see the very clever trick that after queen takes e5, once again all alarm bells go off like crazy. Crazy about e-file. I can just take this. Check, thank you very much, pin the queen, and the game is over. Once again, my thinking is this is not capturable. It should not be capturable at all. Because that's just against so many basic laws of chess that it should not be right. If that was capturable, chess would be an unjust game. And of course, if bishop takes, I just play rook e8. And now he can't get out of this pin. So bishop here followed by f6 is going to win me a piece. The game is over. So yeah, what is the only thing I wouldn't do here for black? Defend this pawn. What did black do? He defended the pawn. This is that mindset shift that distinguishes a somewhat weaker amateur player to against or versus a very strong amateur or to a title player, is that we know, or rather the stronger player identify and recognize that this can't be right, and they just go like continue developing dudes and win the game in the next few moves, literally. Okay, f6 really poor. Bishop g2. Now once again, when bishop g2 is played, as black I'm going like, okay, well, that's a horrid square for the bishop. It blocked off the g file where they wanted to play. And f4 is not even threatening because the bishop is not guarded. So I can do literally whatevs. And so once again, I would develop the bishop here. I would consider breaking this pawn chain up here. I would do whatever my plan is. Black again, oh my god, my queen is on this diagonal, which funnily enough didn't occur to him just a move before when he realized this, and that surely this can't be right because we will go here. So he decided that it was time to step out of that motive that never existed. Alright, c4 makes some sense, so I'm not going to give a hard time to that move. Pawn c5, I really have no idea why that was played. So if we are thinking realistically, what can hurt black now? What we notice is this diagonal queen king together. So if a bishop could get here, that could be a problem. Okay. Now number two is that this pawn chain is now fairly sturdy. We want to break it up one way or another. This doesn't help doing it, and it restricts our bishop. a5 does do the damage because it forces the pawn to either move forward when the pawns become rigid, and all of a sudden I can come back and dominate this diagonal and, most importantly, this very important central square. Or they have to take, but the same applies. The pawn structure has been broken up and the same weaknesses remain. Now after c5, which is a really horrid positional decision, if I play b5 as white, now whilst the pawn structure is rigid, it also blocks blacks, and there's a giant gap here on d5, a massive hole where this bishop wants to come into. And me having kept this pawn back here, I can always deny that bishop with c6. After c5, I can't do such a thing. Castles was played, total la-la land again, like disregarding the fact that this pawn is hanging, hoping for some kingside attack which doesn't really exist. But to his credit, at least he's breathing some life into the position, because now things are getting really messy after f4. And this is where we get to the next stage of the game, where actually white is going to play this game really well. And that's what I told you before, that in certain types of positions, there are people like this guy, I'm guessing, when their pieces are really alive and operating well, they can do and play good quality chess. But what white did in this opening was an absolute disaster. Okay, so once again, if we calmly analyze the situation, we realize that there is not a threat that is actually pending to kill us, like an incoming deadly blow, because bishop d5 can be met by bishop e6. Of course, if you take on f4, then bishop d5 is game, but we don't have to panic just yet. Now, queen e7 played by black was a quite practical decision. I really liked it, with the intention of swapping off this bishop that is not only now becoming a quite decent attacker, but also a defender of the white king. And here white pulled off an amazing tactical trick. He gave a check, and after the king went to the corner, he went for this beautiful queen sack pawn takes f6. Wow! Now this is remarkably cool. Now this is hanging for free, and potentially is a losing move. And the beauty of the position is that in fact black is still way ahead here. In some ways, the simplest one would be, and when I say the simplest one to find would be to take here, queen takes f6, queen takes back, rook takes back, and due to the somewhat better pawn structure, black is actually a little bit better in this endgame. That would have been the easiest way to go about business. The somewhat trickier but harder to find method would have been immediate recapture, a move that wouldn't have occurred to most players of this level, because they may not have seen that the bishop can't take this way because of the pin, or if they did see it, then they wouldn't have seen that after bishop takes here they have this awesome check that regains the bishop. And again, the black king is totally safe, unlike its white colleague. So here queen takes f6 would have been best, with a somewhat better position for black. Instead, however, things went absolute nuts after taking here, and now white has got a winning position by force, and it's truly beautiful. Pawn takes g7 check, king h7 takes rook, promotes to knight. Very important call because mate in 1 is threatened, so we have to come with check. The bishop must take, and now we need to pause for a second. And that's what white should have done too in this position, but he didn't, and that is to pause. So, materially speaking, white has got only a rook for the queen, so this is not looking too good. But this king, under the fire of these two bishops, is in severe trouble, and more importantly, the black arm is so badly underdeveloped that we are looking for major damage. And the major damage very clearly can't be done by checks, because at worst, or best, black can walk away with a perpetual. So then you go like, okay, so that's my emergency exit. I have a perpetual, but do I have more? Well, what seems to be the most logical attacking move, given that our rocks are totally out of play? Let's just bring this dude to g1, and now we are threatening with mate in 1 here, and a check here that can only be stopped by queen sack. This would have been pretty much the end of the story. There's a very long computer line that I don't want to go into now. Starting with check, 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 king back, check here, check, forcing the black king all the way out here, and it eventually lands in a lot of trouble, which is hardly surprising if you look at the position. I think there is a silent move somewhere hereabouts, like rook g1. Yeah, the large number of threats can't be dealt with now. Very, very beautiful line. The power of the 4 white pieces versus the helpless king is quite remarkable. I would like to go back now, however, because I want to show you how white didn't find this and what happened in the game instead. So after bishop e4 check, he realized that that was a no-go and tried to undo the thing, but now bishop e6, or rather I would say to try to go back to the original setup, but bishop e6 was available, and now we are going to enter a very interesting scenario. Rook g1 check, king f7. Please note that now king here would have lost to bishop e4 check, where the queen would have been sacrificed for the bishop and black would have lost on material. So king f7 and rook e1. Brilliant stuff. The rook is attacking the queen and the bishop is hanging behind. So the queen sack was forced. Rook takes, bishop takes, pawn takes. And again, once this happens, you need to stop, take a deep breath and go like, wow, okay, drastic change. This amazing and very, very scary skirmish has settled into an endgame. Let's see what we have here. We are a pawn down as black, but we've got 2 connected pass pawns, which is mighty power. Really cool to use. So if we could eliminate just one white pawn, leveling material, these 2 pawns would give us amazing winning chances. Now black played rook d8. White went bishop d4. I'm not quite sure about the value of this move, but makes some sense. And after b6, rook e5, the parties agreed on draw, which is very disappointing. And in fact, it tends to happen a fair bit these days among my junior students, that they call games off way too early. Way too early. Like, I can guarantee you, if these guys actually had played this game out of 10 games, they would have played 8 at least that would have been decided one way or another. And as I said, there's plenty of play in the position, because after bishop g7, the rook is forced to go somewhere. And for example, after bishop rook here, we can already pinch this pawn, or I can even just take rook takes and just bring the king up. As long as these 2 pawns stay on the board, remain connected, I don't care how many scattered pawns they have on the board, the connected pass pawns represent an absolute mighty power. It's very difficult to hold them up, because they just support themselves so nicely. And it's very easy to go wrong too. Very good rook, very good king. I'm about to come into the center. That king is really, really passive. It is actually a very promising position. Not so much to win, but to make something out of. And this is exactly where I'm very disappointed, where I see a game like this going into a draw. Like, dudes, why would you not play on? In fact, I think that rook e5 hasn't even been played. I think that it was black who offered the piece, and white accepted it. I think, yeah, because these are already italic or bold or whichever it is moves, which means that I added them. So there was a lot of fascinating stuff in this game, starting with absolutely horrid opening, and then a very, very cool attack by white that sort of didn't quite achieve what it was supposed to, and then a very disappointing finish. I mean, I would have played it, yeah, forever as black. 4 isolated pawns. Come on. Surely we have got more to do here than off a draw. Anyway, folks, that was for today, the game analysis. And yeah, I just would like to mention to you a couple of things. It's probably going to hurt one of my students, but I want to tell you a very interesting story that happened with one of my students in terms of openings a couple of days ago. He is a player to whom I taught the Slav defense. Okay, and obviously we went into the main line and we discussed that we're taking on c4. The idea is that if they want to regain this pawn, they must waste a move on a4 to prevent b5, and we use this time to develop our pieces in a way that denies e4 for a very long time. And after very, very harmoniously developing all of our pieces, we have got a rather nice position for black, where white still can't break up with e4 due to takes and takes, and all these pieces are beautifully organized to cover e4. A couple of weeks later, he had a game where his opponent went knight f3 d5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and my student here played c5, which is a beautifully good move. It's really, really great. I think actually what happened was that he played bishop f5 first and then he played c5, which is not that great. C5 right away would have been way better. And at this point I told him that, look mate, c5 is totally fine. My only concern is that almost inevitably we are going to transpose into a reverse King's Indian structure, which you are playing with neither color. So you don't really feel comfortable with this structure because I didn't teach you any openings that feature this structure. You can play it and explore this structure and be an expert of it too, so that you know more variety. But given that we have built a very, very wide opening repertoire for this particular student with open Sicilian lines and white e4 and playing all the wild variations I could think of, I thought it would be easier to keep some of his opening repertoire a bit narrower. So I suggested you play c6 mate, because the problem is that in this structure you are going to be hit by either c4 or e4. You have to push through, and once again we are playing that structure that you may not feel familiar with. For example, this is a reverse Benoni, which he plays with neither color. So I said to him, c6 here, transposing into the reti with either bishop f5 or bishop g4 is perfectly fine. And the point, and I even explained it to him, of having this pawn structure, this very sturdy all on white, is to basically negate the power of this bishop, which is very obviously huge. For example, in this structure, this bishop is doing a lot down on the diagonal, or has the potential to do so anyway. Whereas in this structure, it's never going to achieve much, regardless of whether I play for c4 or the somewhat more stock standard e4. After castles, this bishop is always going to be restricted a great deal by this massive black pawn chain. So I told him that I think this makes more sense. Now, a couple of days ago, he had a game where his opponent went like this, which is already a face palm, because again, this is a one-sided opening where you're playing like, please, please, please allow me to play e4, and when that's denied, then we go like, oh. Okay. So now bishop g5 was played, which is still semi-decent, bishop f5, and his opponent played here h3, which is once again like, I don't want to waste words on this. And now, because of everything we know about chess, we knew immediately, yeah, that that's total rubbish. And as soon as your opponent plays total rubbish, you want to punish it and go for the neck, go for the kill, and go for the kill in the center. And the poor guy actually played e6 first, and after g4, bishop back, bishop here, he ended up playing c6. And it makes a lot of sense, because I just told him a week ago that, mate, restrict the power of the bishop by this very sturdy pawn structure, and you will be okay. Except that this is a totally different scenario. This is nothing like that position, because white played a fully lemony knight c3. These pawns are all over the shop, and here after c5, white has got no ways to contest this center by playing c4 or e4, and in fact he can't hang on to d4. He is falling apart in the center. After the subsequent knight f3, knight c6, it's really clear to see that after the inevitable swap of these pawns, white will have left nothing, absolutely nothing in the center, other than lots of tease and sadness put towards that part of the board. So this is why chess is hard, because you have to understand what you are doing rather than remembering it. This is an ultimate case of remembering, not understanding that this is a different story from what I showed you last time, and here you need to contest the center like there was no tomorrow and try to finish them off as soon as possible. And at last, but not at least, and I really don't want to be hard on said student, we had a game a couple of days ago where again a Slav popped up. Knight f6, opponent plays bishop g5, which is very, very iffy, because there's nothing to pin here you don't really want to take. He takes on c4, which I'm reasonably happy with, although there are other very good moves, c4 black. And after a4, now it's our turn. Now normally in the Slav, this bishop is not here, and instead there is a knight on f3, and so we play bishop f5. Now, however, bishop f5 looks positively illogical, very, very counterintuitive, in the side that that's the only thing that white wants us to play and conquer the center like so. So in this position, of course, we should do something different. My favorite move actually is quite surprisingly queen a5, which is going against some opening principles, but now I'm pinning the knight, which means e4 has been denied. I'm hitting the bishop, and if he guards it, now I can play bishop f5, and now I manage to fend off e4 because it's pinned. Ta-da! I can even take with the g, by the way, if I feel a little bit adventurous. I would, actually. And black is fine again. So, once again, this is not the opening I told him, because I never showed him in this position white being on g5. And as soon as you are out of book, you are not playing openings, and this is something that amateurs get so wrong all the time. There is in their head, I'm playing the Slav, I will play bishop f5. No, you're not. This is not the Slav anymore, or some very twisted, crooked version of it, because you have never ever seen bishop g5 playing in this position, and for a good reason, because it's not meant to happen. And so you can't just carry on like, oh, okay, Slav it is, because then this is what will happen to you, and you will go like, oh, crying it is now. So as soon as, and this is probably the advice I'm going to finish this video on, as soon as you are out of book, you are playing chess. You apply common sense opening principles, and you don't apply the, oh, I remember the Slav at one stage in that opening we play knight d7, so let's do this now, or in that opening at one stage we play pawn a5, let's do that now. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense. You need to apply now what you know about chess to this position. And right now after a4, I would say, okay, he wants to play e4 very badly, I want to deny that. And since I do not have handy developing moves, because bishop f5 doesn't work, and I really do want to play that there, I would play queen a5 here, because for the sake of somewhat violating one rule, I'm going to be able to follow all the others. Because now if, yeah, as I said, knight f3, which seems most obvious, and bishop f5, and happy days. Not to mention the fact that I even have some knight e4 cheap pieces here, but I would much rather use them here when I'm attacking here and here as well. So once again, I'm going to finish this rather long video on this message. When you are out of the opening, or rather out of book, and it doesn't matter whether it happens on move 3 or 17, you need to stop thinking about what you remember of the opening, and you need to start thinking chess, and basically just you need to start thinking, okay, so what am I supposed to do here? What are my plans? What are the logical things to do? And you still follow basic opening principles. And on that note, I did promise you that I'm going to show you a high quality game where things go wrong really badly for one side, to demonstrate that regardless of what level of play you are on, you can't possibly ignore basic chess principles, development center, and king safety. And on that note, I'm going to finish for today, guys. I hope that you will like this video as much as you did the others. Your comments are more than welcome, so please contribute further below. And I'll be back with more soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.